Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the First Look series here on College Football Red Zone, where I take that holistic and 50,000 foot view of all 138 teams that make up the FBS level going into the brand new college football season. But as of how things stand in the springtime, very excited to dive into what ultimately is going to be my 91st ranked team in college football and a team that did end up winning a conference title last year. So I'm very excited to jump into this conversation here today as well. And listen, if you guys are excited as well, I need you to do a couple of favors for me. Hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel, because it takes a lot of work to make this series happen. So I would truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart if you could do those two things for me. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and talk about the champions of the Mid-American Conference last year, and that is going to be the Western Michigan Broncos, who do come in as my 91st ranked team in college football. And man, did they do a nice job of retaining some pieces as well. It took a little bit for Lance Taylor to get it going initially. Lance Taylor entering his fourth year as the head football coach of Western Michigan. And when we first saw him take over at Western Michigan, weren't sure if they were going to be able to get to a higher level. Did see him make a bowl game in his first year in 2024, and then 2025, or was able to get that win. But 2023 in particular, what was a little bit of a rough year, 4-8. So what I will say about Lance Taylor is that steadily he has made this team better and better as his time has improved, like here in Kalamazoo, and it led into winning that conference championship for Western Michigan. And it also is coupled with absolutely blowing the doors off of another conference champion in Kennesaw State, doing it in the Myrtle Beach Bowl, absolutely beating the brakes off of them. So really making a statement towards the end of the season, finishing with a 6-game losing streak, or not losing streak, but a winning streak to end the year. So you got key pieces from that football team that are in fact going to be back. I mean, Brock Rowley, who was arguably the best quarterback in the MAC last year, he returns once again in Kalamazoo alongside a pretty good offensive line headlined by Chad Solster, who is the blindside left tackle for Brock Rowley. Both of those guys are first team all conference players. Jalen Buckley, who we saw absolutely go off in particular in the Myrtle Beach Bowl without even touching the ball double digit times. Well, he was a third team All MAC player last year. He's also back with the Broncos this fall. And some pretty good secondary guys as well, with Josh Franklin in the secondary. He was a third team All MAC player as well. So many of those key pieces that made this conference championship game last year are officially back. So there definitely is an expectation going into this year that this Western Michigan football team is going to be, at least you got to be in the hunt to make it back into Detroit here in 2026. Now, with that being said, they are going to have to do it without Nadeem Tucker, who was one of their key edge rushers last year, no longer with the program. But that is not because he entered the transfer portal. Oh no, he is actually going to get the opportunity to play in at least an opportunity to play in the NFL. He is going to be looking for that opportunity to get drafted by an NFL team here this time, like next week, as I'm recording this video. So very happy for Nadeem Tucker getting that opportunity. He projects as a top 150 player, so probably someone that'll be drafted sometime in day three. But very excited that he gets an opportunity and will do so as a Western Michigan Bronco. So that was the biggest loss that they did have. But again, I mean, overall, this team did stay intact. And because they stayed intact, they didn't have to do much in the transfer portal, albeit with some of the people that they did add in the transfer portal. They did end up going ahead and adding a couple of nice pieces. I think Corey Crump could be an interesting addition, transferring in from VMI as a safety. Could be some nice help for Josh Franklin, who we talked about earlier, had 83 tackles last year, was someone that flew all over the field for the Cadets in their FCS season last year. Also forced a forced fumble as well. So, someone that knows how to make plays in the secondary. But then they also had a pretty intriguing piece here in AJ Green. Transfers in from Arkansas, was a former four-star recruit. Not expecting him to start by any means because Jalen Buckley is already here. He's a all-conference running back. So, not necessarily somebody that I'm going to be expecting to start here in the 2026 season, but someone that could add some depth in the case where Jalen Buckley ends up hurting himself, or at least limiting his carries so that he can remain as fresh as possible as you're trying to make a run at that MAC title once again in 2026. Talented running back. He was a former four-star recruit when he was going through the high school recruiting process. Just didn't get the opportunity to play very much, if at all, at Arkansas. So, again, you're not really expecting him to start, but he could be a good depth piece for Western Michigan this fall behind Jalen Buckley, and having a former blue chip player as a backup. That's not a bad strategy whatsoever, especially when you're living in the G6 world. So, big thing for Western Michigan is not necessarily looking out towards the MAC schedule, but it's really big for the perception of the MAC because Western Michigan, obviously, with what I talked about, is going to be considered one of the best, if not the best team in this conference going into this year. But as we get into the non-conference schedule and really talking about the schedule in general, Western Michigan will have one of the tougher schedules in this conference. And the non-conference, if we go ahead and pull that up real fast, it's going to be a big year for the non-conference schedule, right? So let's go ahead and jump into that aspect of things and take a look at what the non-conference, I guess the schedule as a whole looks like. And man, I look at this schedule in particular, and there's certainly some games in there that could serve as traps in conference play. When you're talking about Buffalo on the road, and Buffalo is looking to rebound under Pete Lambeau. Expect them to be better than what they were last year. It was a surprising disaster and a huge disappointment, to be honest. Central Michigan is certainly not bad either, playing them on the road, and it's a rivalry game as well. Could serve as a pitfall. Also, I'm curious to see what Toledo looks like under Mike Jacobs, and then Miami of Ohio, one of the best programs in this conference, led under Chuck Martin. I think arguably one of the best coaches in this conference. So there are some games in here that Western Michigan can lose in conference play, but I'm definitely fascinated by how they handle themselves in the non-conference more than anything. Michigan on the road. I mean, Michigan is, could be a team that could be a top 25 team to start the year out with the talent that they have, and also finally having an adult in the room as the head coach. Ron Moore certainly held them back over the last couple of years. So curious to see how Western Michigan holds up against Michigan on the road going into the big house. That's where I'm curious about if they can be competitive in that game. Don't need to win it by any means, but you need to be competitive and not get blown out by any means. And then you also have Boise State towards the end of the month as well. Boise State looks to me being the biggest favorite to be the primary representative of the G6 when it comes time for the college football playoff. But Western Michigan does get them at home, though, and Boise State's going to have to make a cross-country road trip. And normally when we do see those cross-country road trips, it normally doesn't bode well for the road teams. So there's some space in here to really help the perception of not only Western Michigan football, but also, the perception of the MAC in general, which for those two games, I'm not expecting them to win. That's why I have them as safe losses at this time. But at the same time, if they're competitive in both of those games and they handle business in conference play, that's going to help boost their perception as a program moving forward. But because of the fact that this is a tough schedule, and historically, what we have seen is that we haven't seen the same team win this conference two times in a row since the early 2010s when Northern Illinois did it prior to the arrival of Thomas Hammock to Northern Illinois. I am expecting them to take a little bit of a step back just because it's harder to really sit back and win this conference, this twice in a row. Really like the improvements that were made by Miami going in as well. And I still think Chuck Martin does have that coaching advantage that could be pivotal in keeping Western Michigan out of Detroit. But I still think this is a pretty good football team. And, I think that they do finish with a pretty good record still. And for it with 10 wins, if you're counting the bowl game as well, I have them going 8-4, losing those two non-conference games to Michigan and Boise State, and then losing a couple of surprising games as well, losing to Toledo and possibly losing to Miami as well to get to that 8-4 record. But unless something insane happens, I mean, they're not going to miss on a bowl game. This will be one of the higher floor teams, obviously, in this conference. Like if anything else, if not the highest floor in the entire MAC. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think in terms of what you guys think of this Western Michigan team. Do you think that this is a team that goes back to Detroit and goes back to back and wins the MAC, which would be the first time that we've seen that since I believe 2012 to 2013? Definitely let me know down in the comment section. Plus, on top of that, let me know just general thoughts on if being ranked 91st in the country, is that too high or too low? Definitely let me know. But hey, with that being said, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.